Hello, my lovelies. I'm Jenny O, the author with no last name. And I'm also a fashion designer, a dev editor, and a game dev. And I was running around in Guild Wars the other day, and then I switched over to play Star Stable Online for their birthday event, and I was just wondering, why does this game look so flat, I guess is a good word for it. Guild Wars, the original Guild Wars, which is what I was putting around in, was put out in 2005. Whereas Star Stable has started updating their graphics in 2017 or so. Tail end to 2017, beginning 2018. So in no way should Star Stable's graphics be worse than Guild Wars. Now, Guild Wars is not perfect. Let's put that out of the way. Out of the way. They aren't, up there with Black Desert Online or any of the newer games. They're from 2005 and look like they're from 2005. But I could just not put my finger on what was bugging me about Star Stable's graphics as I was running around in the world until I went and I opened up a video that I had screenshot of Guild Wars and went, oh, shadows and contrast. And what I mean by shadows and contrast is this right here is a screenshot of Star Stable Online of Moorland. It's a little cropped. You can see the sun's over here, whatever. I did this earlier, so then you can see it's unlabeled as unshaded. So this is, I am not perfect. I am not great. I was doing this in GiMP, so let's just show. But here we are, shaded. Shadows. And you can see here, along here, that I changed the colors of the bushes. I'm going, and I changed some of the tree colors. Now you're probably going, Jenny, why did you do this? This makes absolutely no sense. Why would you go in, isn't it enough to add shadows? Couldn't you just, why did you have to mess with the bushes? Okay. Understandable, good questions. Let's go into looking at that. So we're going to open up this unshaded version in GiMP, the shaded version in GiMP. And then we can open up the file called SSO Shading Project. So I did this once. Okay, so you can see right now they look the same because I have all my layers activated on the shading project. So this is what the shading project looks like if I go into colors, hue and saturation, and I'm going to up the lightness to 100, and I'm going to up the saturation to 100. Now let's move this window out of the way and see what that looks like. Okay, so in this shaded copy, you can see my terrible shading because it's not, 100% even or anything. But here the bushes are a nice bright aqua, and we've got those olivey looking trees are now yellow, and then, well, those are hot green, and the grass is hot green, and then you can see where I added the shadows here along the sides of the building and the underneath the rocks and underneath the trees and stuff. It's a little purple, and the reason why it's a little purple is because I didn't use gray for shadow. I used a dark purple. Now let's cancel that, and we'll go over here to the shading project, and we're just going to turn everything off except for the bottom base picture, which is the copy. And here's the original copy. And here we're going to go back into colors. We're going to go into hue saturation, and we're going to leave the hue alone. We're going to up the lightness, and we're going to up the saturation. Oh dear. The trees and the grass are still that hot green again, But look, so are the bushes. So is this tree. There's got a little yellow around it, but it's not very, it's still that same hot green. Everything is super flat. The trees are, oh, the tree trunks are orange. The dirt is orange. I fixed that. I know I did. It all looks exceptionally yellow and very, very flat. Now, I was wondering, is this just like a fluke? You know, maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe it was just you know, it's up to saturation. See, yeah, in here the trees now look more red than orange of the dirt, so the dirt and the trees aren't the same color. Maybe it's a fluke. What about Mistfall? What does Mistfall do the same thing? Well, let's go. So I went into Mistfall and I was like, you know, they've done some. They've changed it to blue, right? So I got this picture here of Burke's Grange. So open it up in GiMP. And let's look again. Let's look at the go into hue saturation, and let's up the lightness. We have to up the lightness so we can see what's going on. And let's look at the hue and the saturation again. No, everything is still orange. Everything is still yellow and blue. And in the distance, you can see it looks a little aqua because they've added this bluing lighting effect to Mistfall. Now, I thought, you know, I really did think that going into Mistfall, there would be like this kind of opposite problem with it, where everything would be more of a blue-green color rather than this yellow-green color of Silverglade. Now, I'm sticking with Silverglade and I'm sticking with Mistfall because these are the two areas that are actually been upgraded most consistently. So I do have a screenshot here of the transition between Mistfall and Silverglade here. So over here on the Silverglade side, you can see that it looks kind of yellow-orange, and then over here it looks blue-orange, and then blue-green, or yellow-orange, yellow-green and yellow and blue-green. So let's zoom in here, and we're gonna see if we can. Why is the mouse properties up? It likes to do this. So yes, I need a new mouse, but that's $10. Haven't spent yet. Okay, so let's go into the hue saturation while we're all plugged in here. Let's up the lightness, see if that does anything. Probably not. And then let's pull this up. Now, because it's so far away, it's really hard to see if that actually makes any difference. I mean, it looks a brighter green, yes, but it's hard to say if it's going to be that same, like this right here, bright green, bright fluorescent yellow green this far away. So even though the greens are supposedly, one looks more yellow and one looks more blue, when you get over there into the area and you up the saturation and you up the lightness, they're still both that very, very fluorescent yellow-green color. Now, what happens when you make everything the same, within the same spectrum of the color wheel here? Everything has that base yellow color. What happens to your eyeballs? Well, if they're my eyeballs, everything is blurring together in this picture right now. This unshaded version of Moorland here. The bushes are fading into the grass. The trees and the grass are the same colors. So if you were looking at it from a bird's eye view, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the trees and the grass at all. You know, the orange of the trunk, orange brown of the trunks are going to melt into the orange brown of the dirt. It's very, very flat, very, very boring, and looks very, very bad. And in comparison to Guild Wars, when I'm running around in Guild Wars, I have not taken screenshots of this. You know, I'll be running around in an area, and then in one part of the area will be a light purple, while the other part of an area will be like a light champagne golden yellow. You know, there will definitely be areas of high contrast of black next to a yellow or a purple, or even it all looks very, very brown because I'm in the post-searing Ascalon right now. But it's not blah brown. There's, you know, they mixed in grays and purples, and they didn't make them all in the same warm tones. They've added shades, they've added tints, and it helps it's not candy coated too. Alright, so let's look. So on this project, the first thing I did was kind of, I tried to go in and change those bushes and the trees, but I did more than that. You know, here let's see. So another thing that bothers me about Star Stable is the distance viewing. Everything in the distance here is just as in focus as what's up here, up front. You know, there's no depth of field given to Star Stable, and those pine trees, there aren't enough of them. That's not how pine trees grow. I grew up in pine tree forest covered hills. Those hills should be like completely green and completely covered, but it's in the same focus, so your eyes get really, really tired because your eyes don't have anything specific to rest on. So in this particular project right here, I went through and I just faded that out. I took a Gaussian blur and just said, you know, I don't want to see it. I want to focus here on the foreground. The background, it just needs to fade away. What's this layer here? This layer is the first layer of the shadows under the bushes. Like I said, I'm not 100% great at this. The lighting is coming in is kind of behind those trees there, so I could have probably dragged the shadows out a little more. But we also have the shadows from the trees themselves that should be creating areas of shadow on the grass. And then the sky. Okay, the sky is very prettily painted, and I know they actually have the clouds shifting and stuff throughout the day. If you go in at different times, there will be different clouds on the sky, and that's all well and good. But if you notice down here at the bottom where you can see it at the hills and here at the top, the blues are exactly the same saturation. Now if you've ever stood outside and you looked at a distance, you're going to notice that the sky doesn't really do that. Your sky, where it's above you, where it's close to you, it has that blue color, that beautiful blue that we associate with the sky. And then as you look down at the distance off towards the hills, it's going to turn right. It's going to do this. Man, that really does help with the eyes. And lastly, again, this is a distance thing. because we have this blue atmosphere where everything but blue is bouncing off the sky here, or being absorbed into the sky, and the blue is bouncing off, sorry, make sure I get my light stuff correct. There will be a kind of a blue haze effect over things in the distance. Now, we see this in Mistfall. In fact, we oversee it in Mistfall. I got a picture of that somewhere. But they don't do it in the main portion of the game. They don't add like a blue effect to this part of the to the distance. So there you go. When you add a blue section to the distance on a hill or something like this, because it's a cooler color, it also pushes it back. So it makes it look like that area is further away from the viewer. So it looks like the world will look bigger than it actually is. Now, I don't know if anybody cares, but why don't I show you what I did from scratch, okay? I didn't change anything, I just turned things on and off. So let's open up something new, okay, I had a picture of Silverglade, and I took this, and I have 3 versions of it because so we have this picture of Silverglade. Yes, I did crop the moorland one, and here we are. There's the sky, lots of clouds, a lot of greenery, and here we are again. There's actually better contrast, of course, during the morning hours, which kind of makes sense. I mean, and then the only time of day that we have anything remotely resembling light and shadows is at night. Isn't that fun? So you see, during the day, over here, the buildings are completely flat. Whoops. Of course, you zoom in and you move the picture, and it just doesn't want to stay like that because it's Windows Big Photo Viewer. So here we are, the building is completely flat. Buildings don't have any light or shadow on them to give them any type of, they're not casting any shadows, so they don't have any form. They're very, very flat. And this is directly from the game, so don't go, oh, it looks different in game, Jenny. No, it doesn't. This is exactly the camera from inside the game. And then when you head into nighttime, when it doesn't seem reasonable that there would be light and shadows, there are light and shadows put on these buildings somehow. But sure, we don't have that during the day. Why not? And the lighting for this particular picture is coming in from the west. Why is it coming in from the west? Well, that's because they have their sun rising to sun setting skewed. The sun actually is going to be setting over here in the north, and it rises from the south. If you're confused, you can join the rest of us. So the sun for that picture is actually coming in from Silverglade Manor area. Let's see if I can do this without, making a mess of things. So let's open this one up in GiMP. Now, by being this far out, I've actually reduced the amount of visual noise that Star Stable actually has. There's a lot of visual, as you can see in the original Moorland picture, there's a lot of visual noise, and I took a picture inside the village. So here we are in part of the village, And look at here again, there is a lot of visual noise. All these bushes, the they don't really serve any purpose other than to fill up space. And because they're the same color as the grass, they're the same color as the trees, they don't provide any contrast. They're not, most of them don't have flowers on them, so they're not even there for like a decorative purpose. They're just there to take up space and just fill in so it looks like, you know, this is a lived-in world. Personally, I don't know many homeowners that actually allow bushes like this on their properties. You don't get a lot of homeowners who just want weird green. I don't even want to say these are for Cynthia's. If these were for Cynthia's, yeah, I'd understand it, but they'd probably be up more against the house or something. These bushes just don't make sense because they're not showing a boundary line. They're not, you know, they're kind of here along the road, but they're not trimmed or shaped in any way to make them feel like they're a part of this world, that there are people living in these houses taking care of these bushes and, you know, loving these bushes, and they chose to put these bushes in for a good reason. They just don't make sense. But by zooming out this far, we have reduced that visual clutter. Okay? Whether or not that's a good thing for the sake of my for the sake of an example, I don't know. But that's also, you know, this is too big to work on for right now, and it's not a very good composition either. So let's yes, and it's post the Steve's farm update. So let's you know, put this down into 423 by 623. Let's see if we can get this to be even. 423. I hate it when it does this. Okay, so let's try to give this some visual interest. We've got the castle in the background, and then we've got the buildings in the foreground. So here that's a nice little. That's a nice little postcard of Silverglade Village. Now we're going to have to duplicate this because I want to be able to say, this is what it looks like with, and this is what it looks like without. Image. Select none. So let's zoom in. Oops. Of course it's like that. Loves being like that to me. Okay. Now, remember, this is a screenshot from a video game. So, the closer I'm going to get to this, the more pixelated things are going to look. Which is fine, because it's a lot easier to select things when they're pixelated like this than not. So, we got this little bush here. And last time when I did this, I think the bushes I did ended up being a little too, I don't know, aqua-y. So this time, I'm gonna see if I can get them to be a more blue-green, but see if I can make them darker, I think. Yeah. I don't know what these bushes are supposed to be. I don't think anybody knows what these bushes are supposed to be. And most of the time, I'm not even sure what the trees are supposed to be. Are they supposed to be oak trees? Are they maple trees? I think they're supposed to be maple trees. which is, you know, unfortunate because we don't do anything with them. Okay, so here we are with the bushes. So let's go into hue saturation, and we're going to see if we can, if you add more blue, see, here, we add more blue. I tried using levels the first time, and I realized that using the levels wasn't helping me any. But these other ones, I had gone up to a positive 40, and that's too much. Zoom in a little. Yeah, having to use way too many items. So here we are. That's about where they were in the other picture. Saturation. I don't know if we want. They wanted to make them darker because I'm gonna pretend that they're, you know, little evergreen bushes. So 45, 55. Yeah, let's keep it at 40. Okay, well, let's zoom out and see what that's done. We can always like none. And, you know, there you go. There's oops, I did miss some bushes. But now, you know, even at a distance, you can now see those bushes. What do you know? Let me go and grab those bushes while I remember the see? There's just so many of them. I can't keep track of them all. Okay. And let's add the white. Let's add the white really quick to, and this gets really easy because it's so pixelated. It's really easy for me to be able to go in and just grab everything with the. Okay, and some of that, as you can see, is technically water. So we got to figure out, in this case, where does the sky end and the water begin? And it kind of looks like about, yeah, we got it over there, so make sure you have your control down before you, so, you know, that would do it. About like that, just to keep it flat and even. So, white, grab this little gradient, and you're going to do foreground to transparent. You're going to do, make sure it's straight. That's not a lot, doesn't have to be a lot. It just needs to be enough that you can go, oh, that's the sky. The sky is off in the distance, okay? Now, once again, we've got this mountain in the background. That's, if you look at it, oops. If you look at it, it's just as in focus as the foreground here. Well, that's not helpful now, is it? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in over here, and we're gonna choose this little tree line as our area here. That this little tree line is the area where we don't want it to be quite this. We want it to be fuzzy. We don't want it to be sharp. Why is it sharp? Why are we seeing it that sharp? Alright, so let's Control C, Control V, layer to new layer, and we're gonna move this layer down. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go in, we're gonna add a little Gaussian blur. And this time I'm gonna choose a blue from the sky. Instead of just choosing kind of this random blue, let me choose like a nice dark blue they've got from over there. And we're gonna toss on that blue again to make it look more like it's fading out in the distance. There we go. Select none. And you can kind of see why it's important. I should have done that before I blurred stuff, but this is why layers are important here. Let's remember what it looked like before, okay? 1, 2. So even just adding the blue to the mountains helps considerably, even before you blur them out to try to bring, you know, this into focus. So, okay, let's remember that our sun is coming in from over here. But let's take a look and see what we need to change. Colors, hue, saturation, lighten it up, and see what else is just vanishing into the grass. What's vanishing into the grass? Most of the trees are vanishing into the grass, but our bushes are no longer vanishing into the grass. Would you like to take a look at that? That's nice. Alright, so let's cancel and go back. So we've got a couple different types of trees here. We've got ourselves some birch trees, and we've got ourselves, I think, some apple trees or some maple trees, depending. It's really hard to tell the difference between their maple trees and their apple trees. And then we have these kind of yellow-green trees that seem to stand out when you're looking at them right here, but when you're up close, they don't stand out at all. And what else do we got? And I know there are some apple trees in this village. I'm just not sure which ones are the apple trees and which ones aren't, and if we can see them or not. It might be faster to start by changing up the tree trunk colors of the brown trunks. Because remember, when we go into the hue saturation there, when we up the saturation of the tree trunks, they're orange. And I mean really orange. I mean, why? Why type of orange? This is again a very almost childish way of coloring a world. The leaves are green, the tree trunks are brown, and the grass is very, very green, and the trees and the grass end up being the same color green. So much so when you make them that bright, they fade into each other. So you can't, so when you're running around the world, you really can't tell the difference between the tree and the grass. I'm gonna have it over this. I don't know if anybody's gonna find this interesting. So it actually might be worthwhile to try to select by color for the trees until you realize that they use the same color as the tree trunks on the ground and on the roofs. You can't see me, but I'm pinching my nose. Like, why would you do this? So it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's 100% easier, but it's kind of easier to go. See, this is only on a threshold of 15. A threshold of 15 in GiMP terms, in Photoshop terms, is really not that high of a threshold when it comes to color picking. It is the default. I don't always mess with it. So I can narrow this down to, choose this pixel color minus or plus 5, and it will definitely, help, but it's still going to, the more pixels, of course, I choose to try to make these tree trunks solid, the more ground and, is that actually a tree trunk or is that a, no, that's actually a tree trunk. I was going to say that, is that a chimney? The more chances I have of picking up ground and picking up the roofs of and the doors of Steve's farm buildings that don't seem to serve a purpose, then I do the actual tree trunks. I can't, so this becomes one of those issues where, is it better to go in and try to capture everything by hand? Like this tree trunk here, it's only one silly pixel wide. I mean, but you got the pixel, you got more of it up here in the tree, nudging off into the green. So, you pick up the 15 and over here, and you're like, ah. But then you have this area right here, just the ground, and not the trees at all. Now there are two ways that I could deal with these trees here. And like I said, I was saying that there's two ways I can handle this. I could handle this by going, let's make trees trunks more red, which is what I did in the last one. I decided to make the tree trunks red, not orange. And I thought that worked out fairly well. Or just, for a more contrasting interest, then you can make the tree trunks more gray. Now, if you make the tree trunks more gray, it will be more realistic. I could probably, though I'm not positive, have a picture of one of these trees up close somewhere. And these trees look like they're made out of 3 or 4 different types of modeling clay, kind of smushed together, these tree trunks. It's a style. You know, it is a style. It's a very kind of Warcrafty style. And the reason why they're going for stylized over realistic is they are trying to make it the game graphics more sustainable long term. If you have more realistic graphics like Star Stable originally did, where they were using the graphics directly from the Star Stable seasonal games, and there are very few of those left in the game, but there are some still left in the game, you enter this problem of, as game engines get better and they can render better and, you know, better lighting techniques, your game starts to look really, really dated. Is that a... Yes, like Guild Wars graphics look really dated because they are a little grainy and they don't have automatic shadows like a lot of the older games do. See, here's the problem. They also have fences, and the fences are the same colors as the tree trunks. So you're left with, is this a fence? Is this a tree trunk? What is this? I don't know what this is. So Guild Wars graphics look really dated, but at least at the same time, Guild Wars painted in shadows. They added shadows into their game right there in the textures. And it's not a 100% great solution, but the reason why it works is because they don't have a day and night cycle in Guild Wars. They didn't bother with that. The day and night cycle in Star Stable is the leftovers from, once again, the seasonal games, where they had this day and night cycle programmed because they wanted you to take care of your horse and rest your horse, and there was mechanics tied to it. And now there's no mechanics really tied to it. And it's set to server time, so the servers have a 24-hour kind of day and night cycle here. It's not 100% necessary, but the players like it, and I don't think you could get rid of it now without a lot of complaints. Control C, Control V, layer 2, new layer. I didn't do it as a new layer last time and regretted it. Let's just put it that way. See, now that we can look at it, they're very, very orange. Don't you know? So let's go over here and get it down -30, and that will make it very much, it will make it red versus orange. See, still, it takes about 50 to get out of the brown. 50, once you hit like a -50 or so, that's when you start really changing the colors. Now, so this is what I did last time. I just went in and I grabbed all the different tree trunks and I turned them this dark brown, which kind of looks very similar to the over here, but because it's remember when we go upwards and over here, that's going to turn orange, and this is going to turn red. Now the other option, like I said, is to really to gray it down. Like take it gray, take the lightness, make it gray. Like barely brown there, and just make it gray like that. So the reason why I'm going to leave an option of being this gray brown for the trees versus this dark brown for the trees is I don't know what I'm doing quite yet with the foliage. Again, the foliage is blending into the grass, and we don't want it to blend into the grass. We want to have it stand out. You're going, in real life, the trees blend into the grass. Well, we aren't 100% in real life here. And different trees do come in different colors. I want to say the birch trees are correct. And they'd be really hard to select otherwise. So this leaves these little yellow trees here, and these, I don't know if they're maples or if they're apples trees here. I'm going to colorize. I'm going to go into colors. I'm going to go into hue saturation, and I'm going to basically make it that candy. That way, while I'm doing this, I can see what I'm doing with this layer here. Remember, switching over to that way makes it more olive. I'm gonna knock down the saturation. Lightness a little. And now if I did that, it should be turning up yellow. Yeah, it's turning up yellow. It's not, it's not the greatest change, but it is still a change. Take those out. It's still different than the grass. That's the important bit. Now I'm gonna leave the birch trees alone because, well, they're a pain in the butt to select, and two, I actually think the birch trees are close to being correct color-wise, which probably means the grass isn't right color-wise. I don't know. What makes it hard is the way they paint the grass too. Okay. So now that we've done that, and we know that our sunlight is coming in from over here, it's time to add some shadows. And I'm not going to say I'm going to be perfect with this, okay? Because I know I'm not perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go grab some purple. We're going to make it a nice dark, almost black purple, okay? Do I still have that from yesterday? Yeah, that's the one I had yesterday, from the other day. Okay, so this kind of dark purple. Now, in a game like this, when you're actually programming the game, your shadows are probably going to end up being a gray color. But when you're working on a game, sometimes things, unless you're really into ray tracing and stuff like that, you're not going to get realistic shadows. You're going to get gray shadows and you're going to get black shadows. They're not going to spend all the time looking for the perfect super dark purple to fool your eyes that it's an actual super dark purple shadow versus an actual gray shadow. It's just not worth the time of day. And the reason why I use dark purple is because the opposite of yellow is purple, so it will create a contrasting, cooler tone to the overall yellow tone of this, yellow-green tone of this grass. That's it. That's the only reason why I do it. Sun is coming over from the west, which is coming from this top left corner here. We're going to call it that top left corner, kind of. We're going to say that it's coming off this way. I'm making them kind of dark under these bushes because we're going to be coming in with a bigger brush later to make, well, the bigger shadows. So these bushes we're trying to make stand away from. They actually do have horse shadows in the game. That's actually the only shadows they really have are the shadows of the horses on the ground. So when you turn shadows on and off, that's all you're getting is the shadow of the horses. See? But also here, we need to put a shadow in here on the rocks, so we know that the rock is a three-dimensional type of thing. And I'm really a big fan of the airbrush tool. I really am. So we're gonna have to add some shadow to the side of the building here. This is like a little fairy tale castle they've got here. And it's kind of really hard to see because it's how the dimensions of it, because it is just so disgustingly flat. So this castle, I technically believe, was supposed to be originally a medieval tower castle, and then they added on the turrets later. Like there's that one castle in Germany, that is kind of like this. The bottom of the castle, not the cellars, but the first floor of the castle, which is, well, really hard to figure out where it is from this angle. But the first floor of the castle should actually be about 3 rooms. 3 or 4 rooms. It would have been like a great hall type of room. And then a kitchen area and probably a chapel, which originally, since it was just one story, that's where the Lord and his family would sleep, and then they'd eat in the kitchen, and then they wouldn't have the chapel would be added on later. And then as they added more floors, once you added a second floor, then the Lord would have his own bedroom, where he would perhaps sleep with his wife and his family, or his family would sleep out in what they called the solar area, which was otherwise an area where everybody congregated to socialize in the family, the private area, where the first floor was where everybody would socialize in a public manner, and they would have the feasts and hold dinners and everything, and where the kitchen was, and then the chapel would be added under the king's or the Lord's bedroom, because the Lord did not want the noise of the kitchen invading his sleeping time. And a lot of times the kitchen, if the castle was built on like a hill-like structure, the kitchen would actually be put more into the basement level, so it would be more like in the cellar. And that way, if it was in the cellar, you could actually put it under the king's bedroom, because then it would have, you would have the cellar, you have the first floor with the chapel, and then you would have the king's bedroom up there on the second floor. So there was enough space in between the basement kitchen and the king's bedroom, or the Lord's bedroom, depending on what you wanted to call it, for it to be quiet enough for the Lord to be able to get to sleep, and the kitchen people help be able to come in at, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning and start the daily bread. And then if they added on yet another floor, the top floor would be for, individual bedrooms for the king's immediate family, or even, a barracks for the type of soldiers. Oftentimes, though, the barracks for the soldiers would be put out into another building on the outer walls. And as you can see, this castle doesn't have any walls, which is not good. Alright. Let's just put it that way. It's not good for this castle not to have any walls. So this building here is the only one, pretty much the only one angled in such a way where I can actually put in the shadows that would be here this time of day. So the other thing that is interesting about medieval castles and manors that ended up having towns built around them. If you had your towns built right up to the castle wall, it was most often the castle wall there was, and the houses closest to it were built out of the same stone. And sometimes the castles right up next to the wall would be built virtually into the wall itself. The interior outside the castle walls, especially if it wasn't built on something like a Roman ruin, were usually at least somewhere around 1 kilometer and a square mile. A couple, or it was more than just an acre of land. It was a lot. They put in a lot of land because if the enemy was coming, the enemy was invading, what they wanted to be able to do was to take the people in town and put them behind the wall. So you would have to be able to have the people from town living inside the land, inside the castle wall. That was the entire purpose of it. So it was 100% protection. And then sometimes they would have this way, they would build the castle in such a way that they would be able to flood the front of the property while the back of the property was still really safe. So they would take the townspeople and shove them to the back of the property, so set them up in tents and stuff. With, hopefully as much food as they could drag in. And then the front of the property, and I've only seen this a couple times, they would flood the front of the property to make like this moat. And then on certain areas, they would have certain areas above the moat that had been built up where they could put inside the castle their catapults, their different types of catapults. I find this probably a little too interesting. So, you would have your invading army with their long supply lines coming up to your door on it with people on horses and the infantry carrying pikes. And if they were, had any sort of ability at all, they'd probably first thing they'd do is probably start scavenging your fields for anything you left behind, and then the next thing they'd be doing was building from scratch within view of your castle their catapults. Or if they had good supply lines that were safe and secure, they might start making the catapult someplace else, haul the catapult parts of the catapult to your castle, and then assemble them in front of you, while you sit there and you just wait. But the other thing about these castles are they are just built in such a way that the stones, not huge blocks like you would see in a lot of games, but these very, very small stones are put together. You can't put a single piece of paper between them. So they would bring these catapults and they would fling these huge rocks at the doors, at the walls, and they would just kind of bounce off. If you really wanted to get inside of these castles, you started digging. Digging is just, and it's a lot of work. You were hoping it would be the hopes that the siege, you would have this siege, and then if the siege didn't appear to be working, you'd start digging around the castle, to the castle walls, to literally just try to drive them out, to find a way to collapse the wall so you could get into there and drive them out. So it became this contest of who had more supplies, and were you smart enough to put in a secret passage to your castle to be able to get more supplies. There's nothing more disheartening to a siege to have a castle under siege and then have the lord of the castle come up to the walls and start throwing you fresh apples. That you know that he doesn't have apple trees inside his castle because his castle is built on the side of a mountain. And then only once you actually get into the castle, many months later, do you find out that this lord had a secret passage through the mountain to the other side. And he could have left anytime he wanted. He was just staying there to taunt you. Alright, so what we also need to add in are some shadows, some light. Okay, I don't know if this is the absolute best I could do. That is a difference, isn't it? Okay, so this is the before. This is without any shading whatsoever, or and we can add the shadows in first. And a little bit of highlights. Okay, so that makes a big difference already. And then we change out the color of the leaves on those trees, and which does make it clash with the trunks, which is understandable. So we change out the tree trunk colors. We blur out that, add a little blue, make it fade in the background a little, so we can try to focus here on the castle and the greenhouse. Add the white. And then what do? And that will change the color of the other trees. And there we go. And let's see how well I did on the colors. Hue saturation. Let's up the lightness. And up the. There you go. So the green, the yellow, is not fading into the bright green of the grass. And then we have our bushes here that some of them are being a little obscured by the shadows, but they stand out some from the grass too. And, we've added a little bit of shading and a little bit of contrast to the buildings and trees. So there we go. And that is how I would make Star Stable a little more easy on the eyes. Look, just a tiny bit better. Now, doing this in GiMP is a completely on 100% different than doing it in taking the actual assets and the textures and putting them into Blender or in doing them in Maya. You would have to basically either recolor the UV textures of all these assets or repaint them entirely. Possible, but I don't see them doing. Anyways, I don't know, I hope you learned something about art and, you know, providing contrast and different color variations in your work to put in visual interest and make things look better. Or maybe you learned something today about medieval castles. Either way, thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Bless, and I'll see you in the next video.